Hello everyone and welcome to a most interesting game that was played today in the Chess24 Banter Blitz session. Well, not a Banter Blitz session, it's basically the Banter Blitz Cup between a very strong Grandmaster from Azerbaijan, Rauf Mamedov, and Magnus Carlsen. And while I'm still preparing the Paul Morphy saga, the whole First American Chess Congress, I would just like to invite you to acquire the book that I'm currently reading. If you have the opportunity, it's David Lawson's book on Paul Morphy, The Pride and Sorrow of Chess. It's really amazing. I feel like I should really read up a bit more before I continue. I mean, I'm going to continue the saga tomorrow, but it's a really awesome book. And you will not be sorry. David Lawson spent his entire life basically researching Paul Morphy, and he published the book like when he was 87 years old. So it's basically his life's work, and it's just written very well. And there's so much information on Paul Morphy. I will only disclose a little bits of information during the Paul Morphy saga, but if you're really interested, try and acquire the book. You will not be sorry. Now, that being said, let's check out this very nice game. So Magnus started by losing 2 games in this match. He was better, he was basically winning in both games, but in the end, Mamedov was able to flag him, so he lost on time, as these are 3-minute blitz games. So this is game 4, where Magnus had the black pieces, and he again employs his his weird queen to e6 Scandinavian. So let's see what happens. e4, d5, again Carlsen goes for his Scandinavian, queen captures on d5, knight c3, and now, as you know, there are a couple of possible retreats, queen d8, queen to a5, queen to d6, very popular nowadays, but here queen to e6 with check, and it's a really weird move. You put a queen blocking your own e-pawn, but as I said, it's a 3-minute blitz game, why not give it a go. So knight g to e2. Bishop to e2 is a normal reply here, followed by knight f3 and castles, but this is what Mamedov tried in the second game, and even though he won that game, Magnus was winning in the end, but he didn't like the position he got, so he's trying this knight g to e2 idea here. And here, some moves have been played here, but here knight to f6 is basically a new move, so as of move 4, we have a completely new game, which is not surprising if you look at where the queen's at. But okay, we have d4 by Mamedov, and then now b6, now preparing to develop the light square bishop. Also, keep an eye on the d5 square, so Mamedov immediately pushes d5 before bishop to b7 makes it impossible. Queen back to d7. Now, okay, you lost the tempo. You will be able to maybe challenge this pawn later with e6 or c6. And now knight f4, as black will now pile up on the d5 pawn. You want to have it nicely protected. We have bishop to b7 and now bishop to c4. Now, again, defending. And c6 now. Challenging the central pawn. We have castles by Mamedov and just c captures on d5. We have knight f captures on d5, knight captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and then now just knight to c6. Continuing development, preparing to castle queenside. We have bishop to f4, and then now comes a queenside castle. We have knight back to c3, offering a queen trade, and now Magnus was thinking about queen to f5, attacking the bishop, opening up an attack towards the queen, which would basically force bishop to d2, but in the end he decides knight to d4 is a stronger idea. Again, you now have opportunities to move the queen, and then you will have a nice discovery from the rook to the queen. And here, bishop to d5 is the only good move for white, because you open up an attack towards the knight now, and, well, you have to go back, knight e6, captures, and then you go queen, for example, to g4, and the game continues. It's not bad for black. Black can go a rook to d4, and so on. So it's a very much a playable position. But here Mamedov went f3, and here he gives Magnus a very good move. But Magnus decides to go the other way. Here, queen to f5 is just so strong. Queen to f5, and there's no good reply for white. Because, well, the bishop is under attack, and let's say you move the bishop, just knight captures on f3, check, picks up the queen. So basically you would have to give it up this way, captures, and you can even capture on c2. With a completely winning game. So after queen to f5, you really don't have a good reply here. You could go knight to d5, now saying, okay, if you capture with the bishop, I'm going to capture the knight here, but basically you just grab 2 pieces for a rook, so we would have this game. But okay, Carlsen goes for queen to c6, again with a similar idea. Now you can move the knight and again expose this attack. but bishop to d3 now, just closing it. So here queen to c6 was a bit inferior to queen to f5, but okay, queen c5 now, again threatening some nasty discoveries, and king to h1. And finally e5, a move you are always looking to play when you play the Scandinavian. Bishop back to e3 now, pinning the knight, and king to b8. Just getting the king away from some nasty diagonals. We have queen to e1, getting the queen away from the d file, and now f6, just strengthening the center. We have a4 by white, now wanting to start an attack, bust open the king's position, and now a5. Magnus prevents white from pushing a5, but he allows knight to b5, and this knight here is now a really strong piece guarding a7, c7, so the king doesn't really have all that many squares. Any checks along, for example, this diagonal could be deadly if it opens up, and also it just puts more pressure to the knight here. c3 is an idea which would just win material, so Magnus has to move the queen, and now bishop to e4, again harassing the queen. Queen to d7, and here you could continue with adding the pressure with rook to d1, which definitely makes sense. For example, rook d1, c3 is coming. Not a lot of things black can do here, but here Mamedov instead played bishop captures on b7. Again, it's a 3-minute blitz game. Of course, both players will miss stuff. And here Magnus decides that recapturing should not be very favorable to him. For example, bishop captures, pawn captures, queen to g3 check, and then, well, you just have to calculate a lot of things in a very unpleasant situation. So instead, after bishop captures on b7, Magnus goes for knight captures on c2. Now attacks the rook and the queen, and now, well, he's down a piece, but you know, things are in motion. So what happens here? We have queen to c3 now. Again, you could capture the rook, but Magnus goes for an even better knight captures on e3, which again comes with an attack on the rook. So he wins back the piece, still attacking the rook. We have bishop to c6 now, attacking the queen, and here bishop to b4, now forcing, if you capture here, I'm gonna capture here. So here Mamedov captures the knight instead, and now comes queen captures on c6. So it's remarkable how long the queens remain on the board, because there was an opportunity to trade queens plenty of times throughout the game, which is something I, of course, always welcome, makes the game more enjoyable. We have rook a to c1, now brings the rook into the attack, and now bishop to c5, the only good move. If you move the queen, not really a lot of good things are coming. You also have to keep an eye on the b6 pawn, so bishop to c5 is an automatic, basically. We have queen back to c3, and now rook to d7. Both players very low on time. Magnus is preparing to double up rooks on the d file. And here you should contest the file with rook to d1, but for some reason queen to c4 is played here by Mamedov, and Magnus immediately offers a queen trade with queen to d5. He did consider bringing the rook here, but he said, okay, first we're gonna do this. Queen to g4, getting the queen out of harm's way, put some pressure on the pawn if the rook stops defending it, and also maybe if the queen moves, ideas maybe like queen to e6 followed by well, not captures right away, but maybe some ideas with sacrificing the rook and then capturing on b6 could be nice. So rook h to d8 by Magnus, and now h3, giving the king some breathing room, and now comes queen to d2. Now putting pressure on the pawn here, and well, it's just a very tough position for white. You can never play rook to d1. Well, black could even give up the queen for 2 rooks. I don't think it'd be a problem. So knight back to c3. Here queen to e6 is actually a decent try. Now you're already threatening rook captures on c5 followed by queen to b6. But so you would not be able to capture a pawn. You would have to go back, for example, queen to d5, and then let's say queen back to g4. So maybe this way Mamedov could force Magnus to try a different idea. But instead, after queen to d2, he goes back, knight to c3, and Magnus just picks up a pawn. And also he frees the d2 square for the rook if needed. We have knight to e4, threatening to pick up the bishop, but now bishop to e3, of course not allowing it. The rook is under attack, rook to b1, and now queen to c2. So you still cannot capture the bishop nicely, defends it from e3, so it's not a problem, but now queen to e6, again threatening rook captures on b6 because now the queen joins the action. King to a7, just defending the b7 pawn, now twice with the bishop and the king, and now queen back to g4. bringing the queen back into the defense, but now Magnus just crushes down. Rook to d1. We have rook captures, and now first queen captures on g7 with check, king to a6, and now we have another trade. Captures, and now as this comes with check, king to h2. And now we reach a very interesting position where both players are extremely low on time, and Magnus already lost 2 games where Mamedov was able to flag him, but that's why I'm going to ask you to pause the video here. Pause the video and try to find the absolute best move for black here. Well, I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, as it's a very important checkmate pattern for you to know. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the cleanest way is queen to e1. And Magnus played bishop to f4 check, which is winning, but being very low on time, it would be just more reasonable to go queen to e1, because after queen to e1, there's no defense. You guard the g3 square. So the king cannot escape, and now it doesn't really matter what white plays. It's pretty pointless. Whatever you play, let's say queen g4 or something, just bishop to g1 check, and it's game over. You have to go back, king h1, now bishop to f2, you open a discovery from the queen. Now the king has to move once again, and queen to g1 will be mate. So this is what you want to do after king h2. But of course, with little time on the clock, all calculation is more than unnecessary, so Magnus instead goes bishop to f4 check, and now Mamedov makes it easy for him by playing g3. If he went knight to g3, this is also completely winning for black, as the knight will never move again due to the pin here, and well, basically you just capture this pawn, go back, play queen e1, let's say you trade everything, and the king and pawn endgame is of course winning. You just queen the queenside pawn, there's no question about it. However, you are very low on time, that's why the queen e1 maneuver was preferable. But okay, here Mamedov instead went g3. Of course, they both know that knight g3 is completely losing, but now again it's just queen e2 check, king h1, queen captures on f3 with check, king g1, and bishop to e3 check, and it was in this position that Rauf Mamedov resigned the game. And with this victory, Magnus equalized in the match, and it's now 2-2. So yeah, here you resign because king h2, queen e2 check, you go back, king h1, queen f1 check here, and this is now mate. So of course there's no need to complete it. But yeah, I just wanted you guys to see this queen to e1 maneuver. You should remember this. Bishop here, the queen has to be on e1, guarding these 2 squares, and the bishop has to be controlling this diagonal. So you might have this opportunity in your own games, and you will know that bishop to g1 always leads to mate, if the position is, well, like it is here. I even had this position, I think like 2 years ago against the candidate master, and I had this position similar, not this one, but the pattern was similar, and I didn't spot it immediately, even though it was a classical game. I think it was like an hour each. And then I found it and I was like, whoa, this was here all the time. And so you should know it. It's one of the basic mating patterns. But yeah, like I said, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I will put a link to all the games from the match. The match ended 8.5 to 4.5 in Carlsen's favor, which is quite nice, you know, considering the openings he used. So if you want to check it all out, Magnus himself was streaming, so you can also enjoy that. I will put a link to it. Will be the first thing you will see in the description below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I would like to thank Dennis Billings, Jay Roland, Michael Smiglievsky, Ranga Rashchar, and David Kaiser for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Paul Morphy saga, and of course, checking up on your wonderful suggestions. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Saturday.